Hello, fabulous Libra. Welcome to your horoscope for the month of June 2016, General Focus. I am your astrologer, Nadiya Shah. Thank you for being here. Early this month, we have a new moon taking place. Now, this new moon is happening in fellow air sign Gemini, and it's happening in a part of the sky for you that has to do with stepping out into the world. So this is higher education, this is travel, immigration, citizenship. This is legal matters, political matters. So for you, having this particular celestial phenomenon taking place does suggest a beginning of sorts. However, what astrologers are just going on and on about is the fact that this new moon is triggering what is being called the Mutable Grand Cross. It is a major configuration involving major power players in the sky. And this particular new moon speaks to things just not being that clear, and when they are clear, when they seem obvious, not really wanting to accept it, having to listen to all kinds of different opinions, all kinds of different voices, and then choosing the higher road even when it's difficult, even when that isn't necessarily sort of the automatic response, if you will. And with this particular new moon, there's also a lot of energy here that is confusing, and that ultimately asks us to have faith, to ground ourselves in love so that we can move forward and have these fresh new beginnings that the sky is promising with this new moon in our own individual journeys, in our own individual lives. And when I look at this, a few things come to mind to me for you, because it is ultimately a new moon that is saying that there's going to be change, and there's going to be a need for action, and there's going to be motivation for action. So as I look at this, a few things come to mind. One is, as I said, higher education could come in play with this. If you are interested in higher education, if you're applying, which tends to happen right now, people apply or get their notices right about now for their higher education programs, if not sooner, but normally like right about now, you know where it is that you're going. There can be some mixed messages. There can be some unexpected feedback, unexpected results. When we have this much energy, it does say that you can be empowered and that there is action that can be taken. But things might not necessarily be as clear-cut as you may like, and it isn't always very clear-cut, which is kind of how life happens sometimes. And the thing that I would remind you with this is that because it is about rooting yourself in faith and grounding yourself in faith, the end result could end up being way better than anything you could have planned for yourself. And it may be just a clerical error. Literally, I think that's going to be the case for some people out there. But that doesn't mean it isn't something that can't be resolved. And particularly, it's possible if there's any kind of financial component to why things aren't going as smoothly as you may like, that is where a solution certainly can be found as well. But it is going to take patience on your part. It is going to take faith on your part, but also just being mindful that a lot of the answers that you get around this time may be coming from people who are absolutely sincere, but they don't realize what it is that they're sharing and what it is that they're giving information that may not necessarily be accurate. They're not pointing you necessarily in the right direction. And that is key, that people are doing their best around these areas for you. And it may seem like there's nothing they can do, and they really can't. And it's just going to take a little bit of patience and asking, not necessarily at the educational institute. Your answers actually may have to come through networking and talking to other people who are sort of where you are in terms of what it is that you're trying to do right now. So that's with the higher education. Now, this could also play out with matters of immigration and citizenship. And I know that that can be something really sensitive for people. There tends to be a lot of, uncertainty and pressure, and, especially around that, because you're dealing with bureaucracy, you're dealing with government agencies, you're being interviewed, all this type of stuff happens, depending on where it is that you're trying to be in particular. But that tends to be part of the process. And I know that one thing that's really great about the world is that it's more open than ever before. I think that's a beautiful thing. As part of that, though, there are processes depending on where you're coming from and where you want to go. There can be certain processes that aren't always as smooth as we may necessarily like. And so I would say to you, if you find yourself in that type of situation, this can, in one sense, empower you to take action, to go forward. But the other really great thing about this particular sky is that ultimately, you know, I think about years ago, I remember seeing an interview with Madonna, in fact, right? I remember seeing an interview with Madonna, and she was talking about adoption and how she had, at that time, she had adopted the first adopted child. She adopted 2 children in total, but she talked about adopting that first adopted child and how there were social workers and people just constantly coming to her house to ensure that everything was okay, that everything was going well. And she talked about the inconvenience of it all and all the logistics and the paperwork. And she was saying that, you know, she just thought of it as the pregnancy and birth process. Like, she wanted this child to be hers, to come forward. And this is just part of the process. This is like, you know, the physical changes and the challenges that brings and going through labor. So the labor was going to be extended. It was going to involve a series of visits and government papers and people over a period of 2 years. Instead of having, you know, one visit be 30 minutes, it was going to be extended like that. But it was just part of the process of her fully being able to be a mother to this child that she felt is hers. I thought that was a beautiful way to put it. And I remember that sometimes when I'm going through a process that is challenging for me, that, okay, this is something I want, this is something that's going to bring forth something new. So this is the birthing process to get there. And so if you can think of it that way, then it'll allow you to detach. And that will end up being that much more of a help to you. And it'll help you to navigate this time to your advantage that much more, because that is key, navigating it to your advantage. I would caution you though, let me say this, I would caution you not to say too much, not to reveal too much. There's going to be that frustration and maybe a little bit of a tendency to want to push when surrender is your strength, when trusting the process is your strength. And so in order to have things go that much more smoothly, it's important to surrender to the process and see where it is that it's going to take you, and trust that rebirthing process of your immigration process, which may be the case. But it's not just immigration. As I said, it's also legal processes as well. They could go pretty frustratingly right now. I'm so sorry to say that, but that is a possibility with this sky. And if that's the case, then there's really not a lot to do except to be patient. And again, trust that process. Do your best, of course. Recognize what is in your power to do, which is always a good thing to do, which is always a powerful thing to do. And then surrender the rest, turn the rest over. And of course, as I said, political processes as well. If you find yourself, and this can be a time when you find yourself particularly feeling politically inspired and feeling motivated to want to do something, feeling strong things in terms of the process, in terms of wanting to be active. And you can use all of that to help you have a plan forward. But just be mindful that this can be a time, and with this kind of energy, there's lots of carried away energy and not a lot of, like, it's like the sky is saying with Saturn there, Saturn standing across this new moon, we've got Jupiter on one side, Neptune on the other, and it's that Neptune that's going to be more dominant in that whole configuration. And as I look at this, it's almost like the universe is saying, go with the flow, ground yourself, and you will find that true power to be that change and to be part of whatever change you desire. And at the same time, there can be a little bit getting very worked up about information that may not even be accurate. There'll be a lot of like spinning information right around the early part of the month. And so if you can identify where you have power and where you don't, then focus on where you have power, focus on what you can do, and let whatever you feel, whatever comes up, inspire you to be a better person who's living that change that you wish to be in the world. As we move further into the month, in the late part of the month, we're going to have the second of 2 full moons. The last one took place last month. This one is taking place late in the month in the same part of the sky as last month, which has to do with talking things out. It has to do with agreements, neighbors, siblings, cousins. networking, connecting with other people on a level of mind. It has to do with right place at the right time. And that is what is highlighted here. Right place, right time, right conversation that changes your perspective. So remember how I said early in the month, you might get yourself all worked up over something? It's this time when you realize that the clarity comes and you realize where you were right, where you were not, where the information wasn't right, where you were being led in all kinds of different directions. I'm reminded also, here's a really good example, I'm reminded also there's a group that I belong to online, a Facebook group of like-minded people, but it's basically for expats in Cancun. And I remember somebody posted recently asking about how to renew her visa, and all these people responded. I think it got something like 30 or 40 responses. And then I realized, and I had participated in this, and I realized this person didn't say what kind of visa she had in the first place in order to renew it. And that really surprised me because people were giving all kinds of information, but she hadn't specified what kind of visa she had. And depending on that, it would depend on what action she needed to take. And so when I see the sky, when I see what's coming up here for you, it's almost like that kind of thing. Like you're getting all these different responses, and it makes you think that, oh my God, the answer is 10 different things, but the answer is just one thing, and the information can come and it can just clarify the pathway forward. It's like all of a sudden, boom, you know where to go, you know what to do, you know the pathway forward. It's just that information finding you that allows you to make things go exceedingly well in a split second. Like literally, that's how quickly change can happen with this particular sky, and particularly for you. So it's a good idea to talk it out. It's a good idea not to ask in the early part of the month and wait until the late part of the month and then ask your question. Then you'll get a better response. And also to talk to the people around you in your neighborhood. And as you're active doing your thing, it's in those moments that synchronicity is going to be playing such a strong role and can work very much on your behalf to make some really lucky breaks transpire, especially where it comes to any matter that has to do with any kind of documents, any kind of forms that need to be filled out. All of that's got a lot of luck with it as we move towards the later part of the month. What I love about this month for you is that you are learning that where there is some place you're meant to be, where there is something you're meant to do, if there's somewhere you're meant to go, the universe will transpire, move mountains to make it happen for you. Don't get caught in the illusion of the barriers. It may show up, and ultimately that's just part of the birthing process. It's just part of the path that's going to get you there. Don't get caught in the illusions. Don't get caught in the misinformation. Just recognize that maybe a lot of innocent people doing their best might not know the best way forward. And so trust where you are, do what you can in the moment, and then you wait. Wait to get your answer, to ask the question and get your answer at the right time. There is beauty and poetry with bringing yourself into alignment with your environment. There's an ease with which things come together when you listen to what's taking place around you and you consciously decide you're going to align yourself with a loving universe. That ease is a form of love that you can access with a little bit of consciousness and a little bit of good timing.